Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to take a one mock interview, and thank you so much for Priya for showing it up. And she tried her best in acting like someone who does not know anything. And let's see how this interview goes on, and we'll do a end of the day assessment as well to understand that where people go wrong and how they should answer. So that kind of an assessment is also available in this interview. We'll see you. uh, for this mock interview. So, tell me about yourself so that we can start with the interview.
Okay, my name is Molaka Priya. Currently, I'm working as a data engineering analyst at Accenture. I have 4 years of experience in this field, where I used to work on Databricks, Azure, this cloud services, and SQL and Python.
Okay. Can you tell me about your current project?
My current project it's related to retail domain, where we process the data from multiple source systems, and we will transform the data so that it will be useful. It will be easy for the uh, analyst teams for their that what to say, for the reporting purpose. We will transform the data so that they can use it directly.
Perfectly fine. So, can you tell me a little in more detail about the technology which has been used in your project?
Yes. Okay. So here, as I said, we are getting data from multiple sources. So we have to fetch the data, right? For example, we used to get the data from on-prem SQL servers, and we used to get from upstream teams like we used to get as a form of JSON, CSV files, and yeah. So we used to get from REST API. So we used to store that data in our data lake like ADLS. So from there, we will transform the data using Databricks like this
Okay.
PySpark.
So, assume that you're pulling the data from your SQL server, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it a cloud or it's on-prem?
So earlier we used to use on-prem thing, but then we moved to cloud.
Okay. My question is your SQL server is in on-prem or is it onto the cloud?
We migrated to cloud.
You migrated to the cloud. So when you pull the
Yes.
data, you were pulling the data from the cloud or you were pulling data from the on-prem.
Currently, now I'm pulling it from the cloud only.
So your SQL server is also in the cloud and your ADLS is also in the cloud. Is this the mean you say?
Yes.
Okay. And why this needed to be done? Because if it is already in the cloud, then why you need to put it into the ADLS?
So as I told you before, first we used to have the data in on-prem only. Then because of the accessing issue, we have to use. I mean, it's taking more time to access from multiple sources. So we transformed the SQL Server data. We have migrated that to cloud. So first we have the data in SQL Server. So from on-prem to cloud, we migrated. We have transformed.
So from on-prem to the cloud, you migrated.
Yes.
Okay. Which tool you use there?
ADF, Azure Data Factory, this using the pipeline line.
Okay.
Yeah.
You migrated your on-prem DB to the cloud DB using the ADF. Is that
Yes. Yeah.
okay?
Data. Yes.
Okay, understood. Okay. Now imagine that it is there in the cloud. Now tell me why you okay, how you moved it from your cloud database to the ADLS
Using copy activity.
using the copy activity. How many
Yeah.
copy
ADF.
activity you have used in your project?
In the entire project or only this?
Yeah, entire project.
So,
If you can give me
for
some.
CSV,
Hmm?
yeah, for CSV one copy activity, for JSON one, this SQL, Azure SQL, this two, this Azure SQL two, this one is one, and REST API also.
Okay. So you're saying that for one source you are using one copy activity.
Yes.
Okay. Now, but imagine that you have 100 table to pull it. So you need 100 copy activity or this will solve your problem.
Can you reiterate the question?
Okay. You said that I have a one copy activity for CSV, one copy activity for JSON, one copy activity for the REST API. Now
Okay.
imagine that you have 100 tables data to be pulled out, right? Not just a
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
So then you need 100 copy activities, or a one of these will be fine.
No, one is fine.
Okay, one
Uh,
is fine. Okay,
yes.
okay, great. Have you ever worked on the integration runtime?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me what it is?
So, under the hood, everything runs based on IR only. So,
Okay,
usually it uses self hosted IR. So, it is responsible for your data to process, that flow, that activities to run. We need integration runtime.
okay. And who is providing that?
Azure, self hosted IR, it's by Azure.
Okay, self-hosted is given by the Azure. Okay,
Yes.
great. And do you also create some kind of a integration runtime?
Yes.
Okay, tell me how you do it.
So as I said you earlier that we have migrated the data from SQL Server to cloud. So in
Okay,
that case, we need local IR, like where we have to install our IR in our machine. So we have to connect this IR to our ADF so that it will be done. You can copy your data.
okay, great. So, wo- so I would assume there is a one type of integration runtime that is self-hosted one. Second type of integration runtime that is a local IR, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There are two more, I feel.
Okay, two more. Okay,
But mainly in our project we have used self-hosted and this one
okay.
local.
No worries, no worries. Uh, okay. Have you ever scheduled your pipelines as well?
Yes.
What is the frequency of your most of your pipelines in your project?
So for few it's hourly basis. For
Mhm.
few it's bi-weekly, something like that, and for few it's day by day, like every day, I meant to say.
Okay.
And yeah,
And how you, let's say if you have to create a pipeline which need to be run on hourly basis, how you would do that?
I use tumbling window trigger.
Okay. Tumbling window trigger you're going to use for setting an hourly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Imagine that I have a 10 pipeline which is going to be run on hourly basis. So
Okay.
how many tumbling window trigger I need to create? One, two, 5, 10, or how many?
If it's dependent, if the pipelines are dependent to each other, then maximum I can say is we can run three. So maybe
Okay.
three to four, like that.
Okay. Any specific reason for that?
So if the pipelines are dependent, so for example, A, B, C are the pipelines. If B and C are dependent on A to run first, then you can connect these using scheduled, tumbling window trigger. So maximum you can run on parallel is three. You can even give the,
Okay.
we use this because if there is any failure or something.
Great. Now imagine that your pipeline, you schedule it is running fine. Suddenly you get to know that your pipeline got failed.
Okay.
Okay. Because of some XYZ reason. So two questions. How you will identify what was the problem? And if you want to start running the pipeline from the point it got failed, how you can do that? So two things: how to find out the error. Second, how to restart the pipeline right from the failed activity itself.
Okay. So first thing I'll get to know that the pipeline is failed based on the alert,
Okay.
and then we will check that.
Mm. Okay.
We can
So
start. There is a retry policy. if you talk about tumbling window trigger, we have this retry policy, offset also is there. So automatically it will run if, after few the based on the offset we have given. But I have to check on this, like
No worries. No worries.
from the state. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Okay. Imagine that everything is working perfectly fine in your development environment, and you want
Okay.
to take your code to the next environment, like a UAT or the production. How you will take that? Your pipeline to the next.
Using Git, where we store our JSON template, ARM template, so we can just give the, like dev only we used to create the names, the activities, everything. So you can just copy from dev to prod or UAT just by giving, changing the names, just by giving exactly.
The you just doing the Git and it will work automatically.
Automatically, no, we have to trigger that data from, not getting exactly what.
Okay. No worries. Uh, let's talk about a little bit Spark. You're comfortable with the Spark?
Yes, little bit, yeah.
Okay. Do you know what is narrow transformation? What is wide transformation?
Yes.
Tell me.
So narrow transformation, for example, if your transformation is depend only on that particular node, for example the data is divided across particular multiple nodes where each node has, for example, population data. Okay, so if you want data like, individual maximum population of that country, it's a narrow transformation, you can directly get it. Okay, but if you need data from that is related to multiple countries, then there you need join. Okay, so it will require the shuffling of the data, and it will take more time.
Okay.
So it depends on multiple nodes, your wide transformation. So yeah.
Okay. No worries. Uh, what is metastore in Spark?
So metastore, it's for it will store the data related to the table schema, table details, all that. It's kind of a database where it will store the metadata about the tables
Okay.
on the files.
So you're saying that we can store the tables in the Spark. So can Spark replace the database completely?
No,
Why?
Spark does not store the data. Uh, it is only responsible to process. So, can you please repeat the question once again?
You said that metastore we're going to keep the structure information of the tables in the Spark,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now it means that somehow we can store the tables or create the tables in the Spark, correct?
Can create, yes.
If we can create the tables in the Spark, does it mean that Spark can replace the database?
Replace.
I mean, logical, right?
But it will not, but Spark does not store the data. I mean, it's
Okay.
just for only processing.
Then where the table data is getting saved then?
So we connect to Azure, right?
Okay.
So we mount the data from Azure to Spark. So Spark does not care about where you're storing. It's all about taking the data, and it will not store particularly in a location. That's what I mean.
Okay. Long story short again. So should we replace the database or should we not replace the database?
No, we should not.
And the reason is your data is not stored s- in Spark. That is the reason.
Yeah, Spark does not store the data.
Okay. Okay. Great. So Hi Priya. I mean, I want to have a two part of this interview. So I think the question side we are done. So let's talk about the assessment of what you have done. Okay.
Okay.
And where we can improve upon. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
sure, sure.
Okay. Great. So I'm noting down all the questions which I have asked. Okay. So
Okay.
starting with the first thing which we discussed about the project. Okay. Now, when you talk about the project, you have to have a very clear picture in the mind about the project. You cannot be more genic saying that okay, we have some data is coming, some data is coming there. See, as an interviewer, I don't know about anything about your project. Okay. So
Yeah.
initial statements has to be pretty clear because this question is well-known question, right? This is the question which
Yeah.
you already expect. So you can always prepare this answer upfront. Okay. So maybe something like that. For example, my project is insurance, and this is a kind of a data lakehouse project where we have followed the three layer or a medallion architecture of bronze, silver, gold. And eventually the ingestion of the data happens in this project is from our upstream system. In our upstream system we have a data sources like a SQL server, which is an on-prem DB. We have some of the data for our customer is coming from the REST API. We also have some of the external data available in the form of CSV or the JSON. Okay. So that's a very crystal clear. Now when you hear me out, you feel that it's a very clear in the mind that what is happening. Then you say that, okay, we get that data. And then we use an ADF to pull this data from this variety of data sources, and we push it into an Azure Data Lake storage account. From there, Databricks pipeline gets kicked in, and it will pull the data into the bronze layer. Then after transformation, go into the silver layer. And then based on our business requirement, we created the gold layer from which the our data analyst team like a Power BI team pull the data from that gold layer and create their dashboard. That's how the end-to-end project structure in our project is. Clear?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
So it has to be like this. Again, um, so this is how you should do it. Second thing which you did extremely wrong was you said that we move the on-premises database to the cloud database. Now, when you do that on-prem to the cloud DB, you cannot do it via ADF because ADF can only move the data. It cannot move the structure. If you, as it is moving your database from on-premises database to become a cloud database itself, okay, in that, your video seems like stuck. Okay, in that, you need to use the data migration service because remember, ADF can only pull the data. It cannot pull the your structure. Got it? So that
Okay.
point again not went well. Okay, so we need to
Okay.
take care of that. Then we talked about the copy activity. I think you got a little bit confused around what we call that link service versus copy activity. So ideally, we have an one link service for CSV, maybe one link service for JSON data, one link service maybe for what we call your
See.
SQL server or something. But you cannot say that we have a one copy activity, right? Copy activity is pulling on one data at a time, right? Or probably one table at a time. So when I ask that if I have 100 tables or a 10 tables in my database, how many copy activity I would need to have? So then the question would be is that the answer would be is that depends. If we follow all that one pipeline, then probably we can use the loops, right? We can use the for each activity. There we can iterate all that 10 tables and I can use a one copy activity. Could be possible. Or maybe I feel that this is not a very good approach because if I pull out everything in a one activity and if something got failed, we have to restart from zero again. So maybe in that case might not be very beneficial or recommended one. So we're pulling like 3 4 5 tables only in a one pipeline and then other one, something like that. Okay, so that you need to cover. Okay, then in the integration runtime, you get again little bit of the track. Self-hosted integration runtime is the one which you create. Okay, there is no local integration runtime. Self-hosted is the
Okay.
one
Okay.
which
Yeah,
you create that is needed for on-prem. The Azure automatically gives you auto-resolve integration runtime.
yeah. Confused with names.
No
Yeah.
problem. Okay, so work on that. And then for SQL Server, we don't need local IR, we need a self-hosted IR. Then I talked about the question that how you will, schedule the pipeline, right? For an hourly. Ideally, it could be tumbling window as well. It could be schedule only. But the moment you said tumbling window, so I cross question it saying that, okay, imagine that you have a 10 different pipelines, which also needed to be learned hourly basis. Can I do it by a one trigger or can I have a multiple trigger? Then you talked about the dependency and all. First of all, tumbling window can cater to only one pipeline at a time. Remember, tumbling window is one on one. Remember? So a schedule event trigger can trigger multiple pipelines, but tumbling window can be attached only with a one pipeline. So you have to,
Okay.
just refresh that knowledge. So tumbling window can trigger only one pipeline. Your schedule event can trigger multiple pipeline. Okay, normal schedule event. Now, if there are one another tumbling window trigger is there and you want to set a dependency between the multiple tumbling window trigger, that is possible. But eventually
Okay.
from a one tumbling window, you are triggering one pipeline. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 3 to 4 connectivities. Okay. Then we talked about the how you will retry once these things get failed, right? If some of the pipeline got failed, you will find that alert is right, that you can set an alert so that you get notified. Perfectly fine. Then you talked about that tumbling window retry on its own. That is a one way, but that is not a manual effort. So it will try retry for 3 times, and once it tried three times retry, then only it will consider it as a fail, right? So once you get an alert notification, probably uh, then probably you, I think we lost your video.
I think
Okay.
now it's
Yeah, it's back.
it's back.
Yeah. So then in that window we were talking about that retry is option is good, but again it do on its own. If you want to manually trigger that, so then there is an option. You go to the monitoring tab. In that monitoring tab, you go to that execution, and there you see a one button called rerun from a failed activity. So there is a one button comes rerun from a failed activity. From there you can do that. Okay, great. Then we talked about the Git integration. So Git integration to move your code, that is right. We need a Git integration. But again, that is not only the answer. You have to create the DevOps pipeline. Remember CI/CD pipeline. So we have to create the CI/CD pipeline, and then we can trigger the CI/CD pipeline. So that can move the code from one environment to the next environment. Okay. Then we talked about the wide and narrow transformation. So answer was, I understand that you got the concept, but the explanation was not right. Okay. I know that,
Okay.
but the explanation has to be like this. So when you have a narrow transformation, you say that whenever every task can individually work in parallel, there is no data need to be transferred between the multiple tasks or between multiple partition, then those type of transformation could be a narrow transformation. Okay.
Okay.
When we have some task, I mean, in which a data shuffling needed to be done, in that case, it is considered to be a wide transformation. For example, if you want to join the data or you want to order by a data, in that case, I am need to ensure that what is there in another partition. I cannot work on task individually or on a single partition. In that case, I need to shuffle the data across. That's why it is called as a wide transformation. For example, the filter.
Okay.
So when I am filtering something, it's completely fine. Then I can filter on individual task itself without depending upon any other task. So that will be my narrow transformation. Clear?
Okay. Clear.
Great. Then last question, we talked about the Spark replacement as a
Yeah.
store and database. The answer should be something like this. I understand that logically you saying right that Spark does not store anything on its own. Spark is a processing platform and it uses the Databricks file system or the Azure Data Lake Storage or HDFS something to store the data. But when I talk about that you saying that tables can be created and can it replace the database, then your answer would be something like this. Spark naturally does not allow the DML operations, right? Until unless you go for a delta lake. So
Yeah.
normally in
Yes.
the Spark, you cannot have the foreign key primary key constraints. You cannot have that kind of a traditional data manipulation thing is there. So still you can store the data using the Spark tables. You're not saying that I'm storing in the Spark. You can hold the data using the Spark tables, and under the hood data gets stored into the DBFS or the HDFS anywhere. Okay. And we can not replace database with the Spark tables because the Spark tables by default does not support DML operation. Okay. So that is an
Can you please repeat that sentence, Deepak?
So I'm saying that you cannot replace the DML, you cannot replace the database with the Spark. Reason is simple because Spark tables, you cannot do a DML operation. So DML operation is possible into the Databricks. Sorry, DML operation is possible in the database, not
Delta
yeah,
Lake, something.
yeah. So until unless you use a Delta Lake, you cannot go ahead
Sorry, Delta
just
Lake.
replacing
Okay.
the completely the database. Okay. And another thing also,
Okay.
even if you implement the Delta Lake and all, you cannot have a stringent conditions like foreign key, primary key, all that constraints. So you cannot have that kind of a stringent rule in the Spark tables. Okay.
So here one thing is that we are not storing the data, right, in Spark at all.
It's okay. You're not storing it, but you can. The question is not talking about whether Spark store or
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Is Spark directly not stored, but Spark under the hood uses the DBFS, which takes care of the storage, or it uses
yeah,
the HDFS, or it uses the Azure Data Lake storage. Okay. So somehow that is already taken care.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I hope you have enjoyed this interview and you have learned that how the questions can be asked in an Azure data engineer interviews, and how you answer it smartly, and what is the expectation of the interviewer. So do follow this channel for more of these interview questions which is coming on the way. See you soon. Bye.